Well, so tonight we're going to look at the famous love chapter by Paul. And just a couple things before we start to remember. Okay, remember what this, Paul, this is a letter from Paul to the people in Corinth, to his church people in Corinth. And remember, it was reported to him that his congregation there were having problems, were fighting amongst themselves, all kinds of other problems too. And so we just have to remember when we're reading this that Paul is addressing those people with this particular part of this letter. And although it is about love, I guess suffice it to say, we got to remember that this is Paul. And Paul has a way of making things a little complicated and not exactly understandable. But again, so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through chapter 13, and we're going to try to unravel some of the things that he's saying, so that we know. But as I say, keep in mind, he was talking to the Corinthians, and they had their problems. So possibly a good thing to do is just pretend you're a Corinthian, and as he's speaking this, just kind of try to understand. Okay. So George is going to read scriptures for me tonight, and I guess we can go ahead and get started.
Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not love in my heart, I am become a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have left the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, and have not love in my heart, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not love in my heart, I gain nothing.
Okay, we're going to take this 3 verses at a time. So when he's speaking of the tongues of men and of angels, all right, the expression tongues of men means just common, ordinary speech, the common vernacular of the uneducated. And then the angels, tongues of angels, refer to the pious speech of holy men. And so it doesn't matter whether it's those who are ordinary people or the holy people. Okay. And basically what Paul is saying, all this, I like this. I've taken a lot from the commentaries. And of course the commentaries are Dr. Lamsa and Dr. Erico combined. And they just have some really good expressions as to make this understandable. So what Paul was saying is this: though I may speak in the common manner of men, or in the pious manner of holy men, and have not love in my heart, I am become as a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And that is, I am merely making noise. So, famous verse of Paul's. And one thing to keep in mind, and we're going to go into this a little bit later with love, but when in from Aramaic, and when it says, and I have not, if you do not have love in your heart, well, we sort of all have an understanding of that, but also heart can mean mind, and you have to keep that in mind when you're reading passages like this, because your mind, I mean, it's in your heart, but it's also in your mind. So we keep that in mind, and then we're going to go later to more to love in the heart. Okay, and then okay, and and Paul, of course, has to throw in these things, which we would say, why was he putting this in here when he's talking about love? But and though I give my body to be burned, all right. In the ancient Near East, and I believe even some places nowadays, okay, he refers to certain practices that people performed. In those days, when people did penance, they punished their bodies by fasting, inflicting wounds by cuts or burning, or keeping their bodies unclean. And I can't really say if it's true like right now in monasteries or some sects. I think there may be branched off of Catholicism. They do flogging. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but they do um, flogging because that's their way of, I guess it's penance or whatever. And so that's why Paul mentions it, because it was very common then. And and I like this comment. Again, I don't know if it's Dr. Lamza or Dr. Yarko, but in the Middle Ages, saints and holy men were recognized as being pious and saintly by the abundance of lice on them. Anyway, okay. And we're back to the scripture now with George.
Okay. Love is long suffering and kind. Love does not envy. Love does not make a vain display of itself and does not boast. Does not behave itself unseemly. Seeks not its own. Is not easily provoked. Thinks no evil. Rejoice not over iniquity, but rejoice in the truth. Bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away.
Okay. Now, just go back here a bit. And some of this I think you can intuitively recognize, but when he says, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, well, believes all things means when Paul wrote this, saying that love believes everything, he refers to everything that he had written in his epistle to the Corinthians about Jesus' gospel. When one understands the depths of God's love, all the difficult matters in the gospel of Jesus Christ, such as loving your enemy, the power of meekness, triumphing over evil, the meaning of the cross, the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ will become comprehensible and therefore believable. Love believes all things in Jesus' gospel. Love knows that true piousness, justice, and practicing peace are the only ways to conquer the errors of humanity. So again, Paul goes into depth big time. All right, and that's what he's talking about. Okay, go ahead, George.
For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is imperfect shall come to an end. For when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see through a mirror, darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know, even as also I am known.
Okay, again, Paul has a way of saying things. Okay, and so here we go. Paul very aptly and clearly says that prophecies, tongues, and knowledge are fleeting. Why is this so? Because everything known is in part. There is always more to learn and understand. And that which one now understands is only a partial knowledge. People can see only one side of an object at a time. A human being is not yet perfected and is still limited. When perfection comes, all that which is imperfect will be discarded. Now, I have I have some problems even with this explanation, but it's okay. We'll just continue. He's really doing love, um, the depth of love, I guess. Um, okay. So this is the famous verse, and we're going to talk about this. Go ahead, George.
And now abide faith, hope, love, these three, but the greatest of these is love.
Okay, there's no. Remember, okay, those of you that have known the Bible for a long time, all right, and it really wasn't just the King James for a while, but mostly the King James Bible said faith, hope, charity, these three, but the greatest of these is charity. That's what the King James said for many years. Now, I tried to find out when it got changed, but it just people started criticizing the King James version because they felt that charity, that was just a washout, and that it ought to be love, and all the other versions had love. So I just checked it, and yes, I have a King James Bible from back in the 60s, and it was charity. But I have a newer edition now, and it is love. So when and why, it was just basically because people said, that's just not right. So it is love and not charity. So let's just look at love. And actually, this is going to be just part one. But let's look at love here. What is defined as and what not. But we're going to continue with this next week, not just with Paul, but with the whole idea of love and what is it? What is it really? Because we have I don't think there's very many people that really know or understand. And I'm not saying I do either. When we say, okay, love your neighbor, okay, even if your neighbor is not so desirable. But anyway, so we're going to go this tonight, and then we're going to really go on next week. So the Aramaic word for love is hupa, and we were fortunate enough to have the Aramaic word right there. All right. And it refers to something dear to one's heart, something for which one feels the kind of love that is expressed both in words and in actions. And the root of the word in Aramaic literally means to set on fire. And there is another word in Aramaic. We're going to talk about that next week. There's one other word that's kind of used interchangeably, but we're going to talk about that next week. However, this is very important here. In English, the word love often implies something one may like or the relationship between a man and a woman. However, the Aramaic term hupa has a broader meaning and is seldom connected with anything sexual. It is used when one describes devoted loyalty to God, to other people, and to the higher things of life. This is really important. Scripture declares that God is love. And of course, we have talked about that, and we talk about that continuously. God is love, and God is spirit. And the important thing here, and I guess this is just a thing with me, but we use the term make love. I mean, and it really and that is, that's what people think and understand. But it's saying that that's our culture, and it really the love that we're talking about has nothing to do with sex or whatever. And again, we're going to expand on that next week. Okay, now, and just for because charity was used, the word charity comes from the Latin word caru, and also the Greeks the Greeks are also responsible for using the charity instead of love, but that is where the word comes from, and it is used not in the sense of giving alms, but rather when one speaks of devotion and gratitude to God and humanity. When people lack this gift, they become just a sound of noise with no real depth or reality. Okay. So, love comes from the inner depths of the self. When there is genuine love, there is understanding, peace, and harmony. The human heart sings spiritual songs with harmonious tunes that are understood by people of all races and creeds. No one can be close to God and yet be unloving. I need to split these out for next week instead of having them all in one paragraph. To love humanity is to love God. Jesus told his disciples and followers to love their enemies and pray for those who hated them. Love thy neighbor as thyself is the fulfillment of God's commandments. And remember, that's Jesus put those two commandments, and those two commandments, love God and love your neighbor. If we all did that, we would have no use for any other laws whatsoever, not even for the 10 commandments, because love is just encompassing, which, Paul tried to explain there. Okay.